Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. First off, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to make sure, anybody here from the IRS? First things first, you got to be safety first. Make sure I'm not talking about them behind their backs. No, it's just a joke. On the screen, you see there's two of us listed up there. Good news is, for those of you that are technical, there's no sales rep in the house. Those of you that are more operational, I'm your engineer. I'm here to answer your questions, talk to you about compliance primarily. Before we get too involved in this, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you have either heard of the company Tenable or the product Nessus? Any of you? Okay, so a good number of you. So you've got an understanding of what we do. Those of you that haven't heard of us, we'll talk a little bit about it later on in the presentation. I'll keep that to the end. I keep most of the meat of the presentation up front. This is not a sales presentation in any regard. Give you a little background on me before I get into the presentation. So I've got about, thank you. I've got about 30 years, give or take a few years, in IT and IT security. My primary passion is protocol analysis. I like watching the air. I like watching the wire. I've lived doing that for 15, 18 years. So in doing that, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that we often miss the basics. In IT security, we keep looking at the shiny objects, the thing in front of you. We don't pay attention so much to the back, so much to the things we all know we should do, like vulnerability assessment, compliance, configuration management, just really simple things, naming conventions, just a variety of things in that realm. So a little while ago, we'll say about a year and a half ago, I got to my wit's end. Selling product, helping people solve problems, and I decided to take a sabbatical. Took about a year off in my sabbatical, and when I came back, I realized that I needed to help get back to those basics. And so in looking at companies, knowing the Nessus product line for many, many years, 20 almost, I realized, this would be a good place to start. And so I started working with the company. We recently spun up a public sector specific entity, specifically to focus on public sector. If those of you that have worked with us or have us now aren't familiar with the public sector team, that is Patrick Meister. He runs the West, and myself from an engineering perspective. We are dedicated specifically to your needs. What was happening was there was a commercial team. Commercial team was taking care of everything. You guys weren't getting the focus that you deserved. So feel free, we're out here at the table. Feel free to stop by, pick up a book if you haven't already, get contact information. If you have any needs down the road, we're dedicated to you. With that, what I'm going to do is get into the presentation. So real quickly, what I want to focus on, and this presentation's the things you need to know, right? What do you need to know about this? The first thing is that IRS 1075 mandates FTI, data and system security, right? Seems pretty simple. If we were all there, we would be fine. Unfortunately, we're not. The key to this is compliance isn't an option. How many people in the room have had to sit with an auditor? How much of that time did you enjoy? Anybody with, yeah, I want to go do that again? Okay, this isn't an option. You don't get to maybe be compliant, right? If they come for your audit, you need to work with them to help them. So the first thing to know here, compliance can be difficult. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes, again, going back to the basics, we don't do the simple things that prepare us for the future. Anybody that's, we're going to talk about IRS 1075 here, but even CJIS, the criminal justice information regulations, right? That's similar. But the key is it doesn't have to be. So 1075 covers a lot of stuff, right? It covers the data access, it covers auditing, it covers reporting, documentation, the training that you need to put people through, the access levels, the authentication, all that type of stuff, the disposal of data. And secondarily, or the second half of the standard, one section is specifically computer system security. Now that computer system security is a large piece. I think on the next slide I've got just how many pages it is of the entire standard, but it's over half of it. So there's a lot of information in the standard that you should be aware of. 65, 68 pages, something like that. A lot of reading, a lot of detail, very difficult to keep track of. The second thing you need to know, we're focusing today on the computer system security. The rest of it, the auditor's still going to ask for paperwork. I can't help you with that. What I can help you with is getting through that audit with literally no effort and getting prepared for the audit with literally no effort. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. I was asked not to walk around, and I got to tell you, it kind of freaks me out a little bit because I want to be mobile really bad. I also want to ask you guys questions, but you're not on the camera, so that makes it look weird. So we're not going to do any of those things. Good news for you. So computer system security, like I said, section 9 is over half of the publication. It's about 65 pages, I think, other than the additional stuff towards the end, the addendums, et cetera, of the standard. I think the standard's like 118 pages. So it's over half of it. Now, another key piece of this is that it largely, as the next thing you need to know, it mirrors the NIST 800-53 standards. The part about that I want to touch on, and I sort of touched on CGIS earlier, and this 1075, NIST 800-53, they're all very, very similar. The idea here is just to be compliant. They're not all different. So as you're going down the road of learning them, when you know one, you got a pretty good concept and idea of what the next one's going to be. And if you're trapped by two of them, it's not a double burden. It's sort of just manipulating and making sure you're following those standards. But again, if you're prepared, you don't have to do all that effort because your tools will help you be prepared to get through that audit. So 853 is just a very basic standard. NIST developed this. There's a few different ones. There's 853, there's 800-171. They cover different items. But 800-53 is just a set of controls and safeguards to protect your data. Pretty straightforward. Make sure you've got strong passwords. Make sure you're changing passwords every so often. Make sure that your data is encrypted. Make sure that your patch levels are up to date. Make sure, on and on and on and on. Anything to do with system security. Make sure the system's being locked down. Very, very basic. Again, back to the basics like I started off saying. The next thing to know is by adhering to these standards, you lower your cyber exposure risk. And I want to emphasize that. What is cyber exposure? It's the level of risk you're going to have out there. If you understand where your organization, your agency sits today, you know where you need to go to get better. So if we've got tools and ways to help understand where we sit today, we can very easily start mitigation and start remediation to lower that risk and visually see our lowering of risk. So these are the people you get to work with. Their term is a computer security reviewer. They're going to come in. They're the ones you've all raised your hands about, going to sit with you for an hour, 2 hours, 2 days, 3 days, maybe more. Depends on how much information you have going into it. It can be very painful. I have never personally sat through an IRS 1075 audit, but I have sat through many audits in my lifetime, and I can't tell you that, God, if I never sit through another one, I will be very happy. They can be painful. They can be hard when you're not prepared for them, especially. The auditors will use Tenable's Nessus to do their audit. This is hugely important, right? If the IRS is using it, and this is right from the IRS's website, the IRS Office of Standard utilizes Tenable's industry standard compliance and vulnerability assessment tool, Nessus. So hey, if they're using it for the audit, if you use it for the preparation, seems to be pretty basic. And feel free to go out there. They've got the Nessus audit files. We can automate all this stuff for you. We can deliver where you stand today from a compliance perspective, and whether your audit is, God forbid, next week or whether it's a year from now, you know where you stand today. You know what you have to do to prepare. You know where the weak spots are, so you can take the time and the effort and the limited resources that you all have and deliver it in a way that's going to make that audit simple. Automated testing. Do you want to do that the day they show up and deal with all their questions and stuff, or do you want to do it ahead of time? So since the review can take several days, potentially and more, it's important to be prepared, right? That's pretty obvious. And the key to this is being prepared. That's the key to your success. If you use this product line, obviously you are. That's a little bit of sales pitch there, but the truth is there as well. I mean, the IRS is using this. This isn't you could be prepared or you might be prepared. You'll know exactly what they're going to see. And the best part about it is, Mr. Auditor, Mrs. Auditor, Miss Auditor, whatever it might be, here's a terminal. I'm going to go back and do my job. You let me know if you have any questions. You can literally they know how to use the product already. You can give them dashboards and all that stuff real easily. Just have an auditor profile, give them a terminal, and be done. Walk away. Chances are they won't even want a terminal. They'll use their laptop. You'll just give them the auditor credentials for the web UI. Now, cyber exposure, I mentioned that once before, and it's an emerging discipline. The risk portion of this is the really bad part, right? What level of degree, what level of risk does the agency have that you work for? It's basically managing and measuring the modern attack surface. Now, what do we talk about when we're talking modern attack surface? Most of us seem like we've been around for a while. I said I got 3 decades of this stuff in my blood, and yes, it is in my blood. With so much information and so many things to focus on, we're often focused on the router, the switch, the laptop, the PC, the server. We don't think about DevOps. We don't think about the new emerging HTML type of standards, the web type of standards, the containers, the Docker images that can spin up and spin down in a matter of 1 or 2 seconds. These are the types of things we're talking about when we talk about the modern assets. Modern assets aren't treated like old assets. You can spin up 50 virtual machines in an AWS environment and tear them down almost instantaneously. You need to know what the status is before they get spun up. You can't wait till they're spun up to find out whether or not they're compliant. So you need tools that will do that. By doing that, you'll understand your cyber exposure risk and you'll be able to drive this forward, limiting the information. Now, one of the things, this is getting a little bit more into the sales side and some of the UIs, but there's a lot of owners here, and if you're not using some of the dashboards, this happens to be an IRS 1075 FTI dashboard. There's a CGIS dashboard. There's an 853 dashboard. They may or may not be exactly what you want, but you can customize them in a matter of a couple of seconds. Very easy to do. But again, these dashboards are red or orange or green, hopefully, to drive you to the points where you need to pay attention, where you need to focus. It's the same focus that the auditor is going to have when they come in, or the reviewer. It's a much nicer term, right? You guys accept emails from the reviewer, you probably don't from the auditor. I never saw it, right? So tracking mitigation progress, the ability to see how well you're doing. Now this is for the executives in the agencies, et cetera, right? They want to see how we're getting better every day. They appreciate that. By taking the 1075 standard and just applying it, we know we're very secure if we're 100% to it. That's often not the case. Often we're 65% or 70%, but we want to keep getting better. So management gets to see the opportunity from these dashboards tracking this progress. So how do we get there? What's the difficulty? Where's the starting, ending points to do this? I mean, obviously, to be able to take care of the auditor, to take care of the preparation, to understand where we need to focus seems like a lot of effort. First thing to know, it's not going to go away. The sooner you act, the better off you are. The sooner you act, the easier it is to prepare for whenever that audit is. Learn what your cyber exposure risk is today. It's not often a pretty picture. It's often worse than you think it's going to be. And that's okay. At least you know where you stand today and you can make tomorrow better. It's one of those things that I've lived by for a long time. I want to go home at the end of the day and just know that tomorrow will be better than today. That's up to you guys in this room to help achieve that, right? There will be bad days and good days, but at the end of the day, hopefully it's better no matter what. And if you make a mistake and tomorrow's worse, that's fine. Correct it and move on. Automate the process. I've told a lot of people out here, and I probably told you guys as well, when I go talk to state agencies and cities and counties, et cetera, ask them what their process is for vulnerability management, for compliance, excuse me. They walk through this iteration of all the things that they do to get to the point where they can actually do mitigation. Vulnerability assessment and management shouldn't be a job. It's for a tool to do. Remediation, that's the job. We shouldn't have to go through all this stuff. Compliance, figuring out where to be compliant shouldn't be a job. We have a tool that will tell you where you have to focus your efforts. Then you can do the remediation, mitigation to get there. That's the job. Less than 2 weeks. Is that complete for all your agencies? No, but you will be 70% of the way there in 2 weeks. In one day, you will have started, built the systems, up and running, starting scans. By the next morning, you'll know where you need to focus your efforts. Then it's time for mitigation, remediation. Figure out where those high points are and those low points are. Step 4 is to be rest assured. Once you have the information you need, it's pretty easy to go focus on it. You can take very simple steps, patching certain things, changing configuration options on others, rolling out those changes where necessary to increase lower your risk score, increase your compliance score. The key is that you know throughout the process where you stand and where the auditor will be. So when the reviewer is coming in to see you and your boss says, how are we going to do? You can tell them exactly how you're going to do. There's no, well, I don't know. They might think about this or that, or they might find something we're not aware of. You'll know very well where you stand. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about being compliant. It's about knowing where you are, where you stand, because compliance is not an option. We started off with that. Whatever your status is today, it'll change tomorrow, sure. Somebody will load a browser they shouldn't have loaded. Somebody will change the configuration they shouldn't have changed. My favorite user, her name is Sally Mae. Sally Mae used to do things that I bet you none of your users have ever done. That's a lie. You've all seen these people. Users are our best job security. But at the end of the day, we still need to be compliant no matter what they're doing. So we can't use them as an excuse. We just got to keep moving forward with ways to understand what's happening in our environments. Last thing to know, prepare for the future, modern assets. How many people here, just curious, have anything going on? Just talking, let me start off with just talking about DevOps. Just starting, okay? How many people in the room have DevOps working and up and running using containers, anything like that? Nobody. So it's coming, and it's going to be difficult. And the key to container, which is all part of this, right? If your FTI data is up there and it's part of a container, those containers spin up and down. If you've ever been to Netflix, most of you have, your control bar is a container. It's built when you say, I want this movie. And it tears down as soon as that movie's over. And every little piece of that screen in Netflix is another container that's spun up specifically for you. and the other million of people that are on Netflix. They're just spinning up and spinning down when they're not necessary. So the future is these machines that are coming and going faster than you can keep an eye on them. The key to that is getting involved in what they call the pipeline, the development pipeline, so that throughout the development process, you're testing these things so that the development is secure rather than waiting for the machine to spin up and spin down. Happy to talk to you more about that out there as well if you'd like to talk more about it. So the idea of cyber exposure, lifecycle, it's redundant. We're going to go through this process constantly. It's like several other things you do in your life. You're going to do some discovery first off, identify, figure out what the assets are. Anybody here know every asset in their environment or think that they've got a clue about every asset in their environment? I see a couple of people laughing. Yeah, they come and go sometimes. They come in pockets. I had a particular user, we'll call her Sally, that once brought in an access point, plugged it in, put it in her drawer because she didn't want to connect the cable anymore. So she would just walk in, set her laptop down, and connect to her laptop. Unfortunately, it was giving out the same addresses with DHCP that the rest of the floor was using. Oh, was that fun to track down for a while. Anyways, find those assets. Assess the assets. What's the state of it? I mean, if you don't know what the asset is, you don't know what the state of the asset is. Pretty straightforward. Figuring out misconfigurations, etc. Now, one of the things I want to point out, we're talking about compliance here, right? And we're talking about regulatory compliance. When I speak of compliance, I mean internal compliance or regulatory compliance. You might have internal compliance that says that your internal passwords need to be 113 characters. Okay, well, with the right tool, you can validate that everywhere, whatever it is. It doesn't have to just be against the standard that's regulatory. It can be internal as well, and whatever you choose to do. Analyze. Figure out the exposures in context. Hugely important. Context is everything in this day and age. You take it out of context, it probably is completely different than what it was in context, unfortunately. Fix what you can fix. Prioritize what you can fix. Take the biggest thing first. I know it sounds simplistic, but with the right tool, it'll prioritize stuff for you. It doesn't have to be something where you got to figure out what's important. CVSS scores 2.0, 3.0 are all out there. We can tell you the exposure, whether it's network accessible, whether it's on-box accessible. We can give you critical scoring for all those items. So depend on the tools that are out there. These are all MITRE organized standards. It's not something that we built or anybody else. They're industry standards you can depend on. Figure out how you're going to remediate. And then move forward with measuring, giving information to the executive staff, giving information to drive the future. Make sure that you get the resources you need. As they start seeing dips, they'll understand where they're at. And if you do that alone, well, they'll extrapolate from that with another body or two, they could get that line to drop even more and might get you the resources, the budget, the things that you need to accomplish your task. How many people have all the budget and resources they need? You guys forget and put your hands up? Well, sorry. So helping yourselves, automating this process, getting you out of this role actually gives you another body in your organization for the period of time that you're doing these things. And then you repeat. I talked a little bit about the attack surface. This is the old days, right? We had really simple things. We had virtual machines, mobile, laptop, desktop. Then we get all this stuff, industrial IoT, SCADA, all your industrial control stuff, enterprise IoT, containers and cloud. I wouldn't consider virtual machines all that modern technology, but the way we're spinning them up and spinning them down now from a cloud perspective, huge. Laptops, web apps, mobile devices. How many people here have more than 4 devices? So that's a good showing of the hands in the room. That's, You got a laptop, you got a tablet, you might have a secondary tablet, you might carry around an iPad. I've got, oh yeah, my laptop, I use that once in a while. That server thing sits underneath my desk, warming up my legs. I once got kicked out of a desk. I was sitting right next to the secretary for the chief technology officer. I sat in that desk for approximately 2.5 days because my server made so much noise underneath the desk. Secretary went, no more, you leave. I was like, yes. So why Tenable? Let's talk a little bit about the company. I have a few users here. So a lot of you know Nessus. That's the product, it's the scanner. It's been around for 20 years. Probably used it in school, going through college, whatever, going through technical classes. It's been around for a long time. From a technology leadership perspective, I don't know that there's any company better. Our founder is still with us. He's the person or not that originally wrote Nessus. We just brought on a new CEO recently, was running RSA. Our leadership is second to none. That's one of the reasons I'm here. I was looking for very specific things for the next company I worked for. I mentioned that I came back from sabbatical. I was not looking for a job. I was looking for a purpose. And I found it with the executive leadership team. Singular vision. We are focused, period, end, on vulnerability and compliance management. We are not looking for other avenues to make money. You buy our product set, you buy it for X number of IPs. You get what we have. There's not a bunch of add-ons and things like that. It's very simplistic. Now there are a couple web app scanning and container security that are a separate license, but for the most part, you buy the stuff, you use it for the number of IPs you want. You want 50 scanners, you get 50 scanners. You want 500, you get 500. That's fine, no limits. Singular vision, focused on vulnerability and configuration and compliance management. Customer commitment, feel free to look at the web. People know us, we've been around for a very long time. We're here for the long term. We just recently went public, for those of you that don't know it, opened 40% higher than we were expected to open, and we're doing well from that perspective, but we are now a public company. You can, believe Forrester from 2017, or you can believe me, from me personally, and this has nothing to do with the company or anything else. This is me and my reputation on the line. I will guarantee you that we are one of the most forward-looking companies in our space. We're not out to get the buck for nothing. We're here for a very important reason. Remember how I started? Let's go back to basics. Vulnerability management has been here for over 20 years. How many people think they're doing a good enough job in your environment today with vulnerability management? And I want you to be honest here. Are you looking at everything? Are you doing a good job? Show of hands. And that's my point, right? We got to get back to the basics sooner or later. There's a lot of good products out there. I'm not beating up anything that's out on the floor today. There's some really cool stuff and some really shiny stuff. Before I went on sabbatical, I was with a behavioral analytics company. Talk about a shiny object. Oh, it was really cool. But before you start worrying about who's inside your network, shouldn't you just sort of lock the door or close the door first and then start to worry about those things? Compliance is the same way. I mean, we're here to talk about 1075 compliance. It's just one piece of compliance. You should all be compliant. We should be by now, I would hope. We're not. We could be. The tool will do it for you. It'll help you get there. It's not a sales pitch. It's a personal pitch. Yeah, we've got a bunch of customers. We've got a bunch of Fortune 500, Fortune 500 and Global 2000. We have 98% of the federal government, DOD, FBI, you name it. We have services that tie it all together. Need training, implementation. The next slide's pretty good. Integration and automation. There you go. That's marketing. I'll leave that up there for a second. It is just untenable. Sort of heard that in my voice, hopefully, today. But the best way to automate things is with integrations. Some of the best integrations we have today, and there's a whole bunch of them up here, and you'll see a lot of these names from out on the floor. New Splunk integration. If you work everything out of Splunk, new Splunk integration, highly tied together. ServiceNow, a new strategic partnership with ServiceNow to get bidirectional information in and out of the products to suit all the needs from that perspective of ticketing and CMDB, et cetera. But there's a lot. IBM's here. IBM's out there on the floor. I didn't see Case out there. Who else? VMware. Thycotic, I think I saw out there. Forescout, Cisco, and on and on. So in closing, I've had a lot to say. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'd like to talk to any of you out at the table that are interested. Patrick and I will be here. We are your team. I started off with saying that as well. We are the public sector team. We'll support you all. If you need training, if you need consulting, if you need somebody to push your upper management to help you a little bit more. My partner is very good at that. He doesn't like taking no for an answer. I appreciate that. I'm here on the technical side to help you achieve your goals. My goal at the end of the day, whether it's here at the table or if you call me at some point, is to help you be successful. Period. This isn't a job to me. This is an adventure. No, it's too easy. This isn't a job to me. This is what I do for my life. I've got passion for this like you wouldn't believe. So if I can help you in any way be successful, and it might even not be this, it might be protocol analysis. I'm happy to help you. If there's any questions you have that I can offer assistance and make you more successful, come visit with us. Happy to talk to you. We've got cool little blue books too. They say Tenable on them. Good notebook. Any questions? Yeah.
Kind of new to compliance and all this stuff. So how does your product compare to other compliance software in the market in terms of cost and reach?
So I would say in general, across the board from a reach perspective, we cover a lot more devices with the mobile assets, things like that, as well as agent-based needs for things that never touch the network, to real-time watching the wire in real time rather than just doing scans, to all the modern assets that we talked about from containers, et cetera, all with potentially one product. I don't think anybody else in the space has the reach we have from an asset perspective. From a cost perspective, I can guarantee you that we're probably going to be cheaper. Because we've got a singular focus and we're only focused on what we're really good at, we're not looking for other things. We're here to build long-term partnerships. So from that perspective, cost is something that we can work on all the time. Cost is never a barrier for us. I think that from the ability to cover the CVEs, the Common Vulnerability and Exposure List, you will find that we are second to none. We cover over 120,000 different plugins, covering 48,000 possibly. It's all up on our website. 48,000 of the CVEs, I believe, and I don't think anybody comes close to us in that regard. We have a Tenable research group that is massive. I think it's close to 100 people now that just do research. We've recently discovered many new zero-day vulnerabilities. So these are all reasons why, but at the end of the day, what I would say is that very easily you can automate us. You might be able to automate them as well, but I don't think that you would find the ability to automate, notify, report on to various people with the role-based access controls we have in a way where you are hands-off. I mean, you don't have to do updates. It's all managed by the manager. It automatically grabs updates. It distributes updates out to all the scanners as necessary. Every day we do updates, sometimes multiple a day. They don't. Some of them are every other day. Some of them are only when necessary. We do it every day and multiple times a day. So there's a lot of reasons, probably took your question farther than I needed to, but yeah. Yeah.
So, a lot of challenges that you can break you, find the vulnerabilities, and then fix it. But fixing that, what's the general approach to fixing so it will is not generally at all? Because we do have a challenge sometimes that some of our applications are old, and we fix those. We want to know, is there another, what are the options for fixing? Do you give advice to that level, or you just say, here's the vulnerability, now you figure out how to?
No, absolutely not. So there's even reports for remediation. So you can do a remediation report, which will give you not only links to the vendor, Microsoft, CentOS, whatever it is. Also links to the CVE, so you can learn more about it if you need to, but there's a pretty decent write-up right in the remediation report. But it's literally a step-by-step, load this patch, here's the link for it from Microsoft. If it applies to multiple operating systems, we'll send you to the website for Microsoft that lists all the operating systems, so you can actually pick that patch out. There are situations, and I think I heard in your question, that there might be some systems that are old. Maybe they're not supported anymore. Maybe they're out of date and nobody's going to update it because the company went out of business. There's also ways in the product to accept the risk. It's one of the things that the reviewers will look for. You can't always patch everything. And in those cases, you might have to say, I accept this risk. Why? Vendor went out of business, there will be no more updates to this platform, and until when? So we'll give you a calendar where you can say, review this in 3 months or 6 months or whatever. And all that stuff goes to the auditor, right? They can just look at accepted rules and they'll see why you accepted it. It won't show up in your reports anymore, but it'll show up in the accepted risk. And so from that perspective, you've got everything you need as you migrate to a new application. You can keep all the notes in that accepted risk. So again, when that reviewer comes in, they don't have to ask you what you're doing. The notes are there for them and they understand why you've made the decision you've made. You can also put in mitigations and other things that you've done, like block the firewall, etc., to help them even further in that notes section. Great question. Other questions?
Maybe an odd question or not, but the penalty for not passing the IRS 1075 audit, besides them deciding, okay, we can't give you this data because your systems are so bad, we can't just throw IRS data out there. Are there dour fines out there as well, or is it just withholding information?
So,
pretty serious as well.
Well, I mean, it really depends on, first you get warnings, right? So from that perspective, you're going to get the ability to work through it to a point. The IRS is not going to be, oh, okay, you don't want to comply. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. They will take your house, your children, your next of kin. It's a serious thing. Compliance is not an option. You have to show due diligence. People will lose their jobs. And at the end of the day, are you really responsible for the organization compliance? No, but your boss will be looking to, fix the problem if you're not compliant. It comes down to the, lowest common link. So it's important. It's important.
These are two product questions. Is this basically continuous view? The product you use, or at least about a year ago, was called continuous view. So the question is this part of the continuous view product? So we have Security Center and we have Security Center Continuous View, CV. The difference between the two, Security Center does everything that I've talked about up here from a compliance perspective, et cetera. But when it goes out there, it uses the Nessus scanners to scan your environment. Let's say you're doing it every 2 weeks. Between those 2 weeks, you have no vision. As soon as you do a scan, it's basically out of date because somebody could have loaded another software, something like that. What the continuous view product does is it adds two more components. One that watches the wire, that's where my heart's at. One that watches the wire, watches the packets, looks at user agents, connectivity to blacklisted sites, things like that, understands that information, ties that to real-time reporting. The other piece looks at log files and does similar stuff real-time to log files. So if between scans, somebody, as an example, loads a vulnerable browser and then uses it, well, we'll see the loading, the installation of it in logs, we'll see the user agent of it on the wire, and we'll alert immediately that something has changed since our last scan. We can also tell you, hey, we've never seen that machine. You scanned last week, well, that machine wasn't in the scan. So you can also tie a scan to it and say, hey, it's new, go scan it. But not directly related to continuous view,
Okay, so this is part of Security Center
period.
is basically what you've been presenting.
Yes.
Okay, and then the second question, I saw only the Archer on the GRC, but it looks like you're doing some of the same things that Archer does. And I saw the ServiceNow, they have a GRC as well, but I didn't see that up there. Is that something on the roadmap or something?
So I'm not sure exactly from the integration perspective what you're talking about. I mean, the governance side of the house, there's a variety of vendors out there. We give the data to those platforms, right? So because we're so good at what we do and we've got so many CVE covered, we're definitely the breed that you're looking for from that perspective. Whether it's Archer or others, I can't tell you that I've got that much experience with them, but we do integrate with several of them to move data, basically. Did that answer the question, or was I?
No.
So maybe ask it again.
So Archer is one GRC platform.
Okay.
ServiceNow has their own GRC platform.
Okay.
They have a module.
So the risk compliance side?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the service, just integrations, right? So we're pulling data in and passing it out. That's the primary list, but we do have an open API. So we can work with just about any of the vendors depending on, you know, whether or not they've got an open API and which direction the data is flowing.
Okay.
Yes?
Any recommended MSSPs or SIMs that you work well with?
A variety of them, yeah. Not really right now. You know, there's a lot of players out there, and a lot of them will do the MSSP services, and happy to come by the table, and you know, we can talk to you more on that one-on-one. Depends on where you're at and what you're looking for. I mean, that's a kind of a big question, right? It really depends on at what level you're looking for those services and whether or not they can support that. But we don't really have an MSSP product right now, but we do have some people using the product as an MSSP solution for certain customers. Makes sense. It's not truly multi-tenant, but it's got a lot of role-based access control RBAC built in. So today, but it's about to be multi-tenant probably within the year. Good questions, thank you. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I will give you back 0 minutes. Have a good day. And come by and see us.